truth is, when you vote, it matters. It can make your life better or it can make it worse. Sometimes I talk to folks who don't think it's going to make a difference whether Kamala Harris or Donald Trump wins. Yeah, no, you guys know people like this, right? I mean, they're not bad people. They're just like, politics, it's not going to make any difference in my life.
Yeah.
They figure it's not going to have an impact. And I constantly have to remind them, yes, whoever's president, they're not going to end poverty overnight. They're not going to end racism. Right? You're not suddenly going to not have to go to your job and listen to your boss. Things are not going to suddenly be perfect. But you know what? It makes a difference. When I passed the Affordable Care Act, almost 50 million people got health care that they didn't have before. That made a difference in their lives. More than 50 million people with pre-existing conditions can no longer be denied coverage or charged more. It made a difference to them. Listen, when I was president, I'll give you just one other example. And I want you to use this example when you're talking to folks who say it's not going to make any difference. I have been talking to scientists for a while, and so in my last year in office, we put together a playbook for how to deal with the eventuality of a pandemic. Because scientists have been saying with globalization and travel, etc., rising populations, that at some point there was going to be a pandemic. And so I said to my team, we got to have a plan, just like you do for hurricanes or tornadoes or natural disasters. So we put together this whole playbook. And we practiced the playbook. We get all the agencies. This is how we're going to respond. This is how to make sure that the public health systems in all the states are working. Here's how we're going to think about the schools. And when Donald Trump came in, we gave over this playbook to them. And
That was good.
okay, but the point is, he ignored it.
Oh boy.
And 3 years later, a pandemic hits.
Oh boy.
Now, I want to really be fair on this, but I want everybody to pay attention. No matter who was president at the time, this was going to be a problem. This was a generational pandemic. People were going to get sick. People were going to die. We didn't have a vaccine right away. Businesses were going to have to shut down for a while. Travel was going to be restricted. But if you look at a country like Canada, their per capita death rate was 40% lower than it was here in the United States. So just do the math. That's more than 400,000 people. People's grandmothers, people's fathers, people's moms, who would have been alive if Donald Trump had just paid attention and tried to follow the plan that we gave him. It might have been somebody in your family that could have been impacted. So if somebody tells you that this doesn't make a difference, having somebody competent, somebody who cares about you, who listens to ordinary people, who listens to people who are experts in these areas, if you hear somebody say it doesn't matter, it does matter. And at some point it will make a difference to them. And if that's not enough, then remind them that, you know what, this election is also about more than policies, it's about values. And it is about character. Some of you know, I grew up, I didn't have a father in the house. My parents divorced when I was 2. I met my dad once for about a month. But I did have a lot of people around me. The stepfather, my grandparents, teachers, coaches. most of all my mom, who taught me the difference between right and wrong. Showed me what it meant to have integrity, to be honest, to be responsible, to work hard, to treat other people the way I wanted to be treated. And most of you grew up the same way. And I'll tell you the truth. You know, when I was a teenager, young adult, I didn't always live up to those values. I made mistakes, but I tried to learn from them. And as I got older, I continued to benefit from people who reinforced those values. Obviously, my wife, Michelle. But also friends and neighbors and co-workers. And I'll give you an example. Being in Vegas makes me think about my friend Harry Reid, who was the president of the Senate for a long time. And he was a proud Democrat. He didn't shy away from bearing up to politics. One day a staffer handed him a draft of remarks in which he referred to himself as a former boxer, and he was editing it and he crossed out former. He was a tough guy. He was 70 years old at the time, but he refused to see politics as just this battle between good and evil. He'd work with Republicans, he'd work with people who didn't agree with him. He understood we're all a bundle of contradictions. We all got flaws, but despite our individual differences, it's our collective humanity, what we have in common, that makes a difference. That's what makes a country great. The point is, he had values, he had character. One of the most disturbing things about this election, about Trump's rise in politics, we seem to have set aside the values that so many of us were taught. A few weeks ago, one of the deadliest hurricanes in American history. President Biden, Vice President Harris, they're down meeting with local officials, comforting families, making sure aid is in place. Donald Trump and his running mate made up stories about the Biden administration withholding aid, giving it to undocumented immigrants, not giving it to Republicans, just making this stuff up. Even Republicans on the ground, even MAGA Republicans on the ground, said it wasn't true. So my question is, when did that become okay? How can it be okay? It doesn't matter where you stand on the issues. It doesn't matter what your party is. That kind of behavior is not okay. If your co-workers acted like that, they wouldn't be your co-workers very long. If you had a family member like that, you might still love them, but you wouldn't put them in charge of nothing. And yet, when Donald Trump repeatedly lies or cheats, or shows utter disregard for our Constitution, or just insults people, when he calls service members who died in battle losers, or fellow citizens vermin, or the enemy within, people make excuses for him. They say, well, he's not serious. He's not. Everything a president says is serious. Everything that somebody's aspiring to office is listened to. People make excuses for it. They think, well, it's funny, or it's okay as long as our side wins. And I've noticed this especially among some men who seem to think Trump's behavior of bullying people or putting them down is somehow macho sign of strength. I'm telling you, that's not what real strength is. Never has been. Real strength's working hard.